Imagine standing at the edge of a high diving board when you were like 10 years old. You look down at the water, you take a breath, and in that specific moment, a single minute feels like an absolute eternity, right? Like time practically freezes.
Oh yeah, it feels like hours up there.
Exactly. But then compare that to your life last week. If you try to map out what you did last Tuesday, it is probably a complete blur. The days just seem to evaporate. We constantly find ourselves looking at the calendar in shock, wondering how it is already December again.
Which really presents a profound paradox when you look at the physics of it. Because, a day still contains 24 hours. A year still has 365 days. The mechanical measurement of a minute is identical to what it was when you were 10 years old.
Right. Nothing has actually changed.
Right. Yet the human experience of that measurement radically accelerates as we age.
Well, welcome to this deep dive. Today we are looking at a fascinating stack of research that crosses psychology, neuroscience, and behavioral economics to answer a question that affects every single one of us. Why does time speed up as we get older?
Such a universal feeling.
It really is. And our mission here isn't just to share some interesting trivia. We are going to deconstruct the actual mechanics of human memory. The goal is to fundamentally change how you view your daily routines and, well, your relationship with the clock.
Yeah, we really need to rethink this entirely.
So to start, we have to dismantle a very common assumption. We tend to think of time as something we observe directly, like watching a river flow past us.
And that assumption is exactly the root of the confusion. To understand this, we can look at how our senses are built. We have specific biological receptors for almost everything we experience too.
Like our eyes and ears.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have photoreceptors in your retinas that allow you to perceive light and color. You have hair cells in your inner ear that detect the vibration of sound waves, so the brain can directly see light and hear sound. But the brain does not have a single time receptor.
Wait, really? None at all?
None. Time has no physical mass, no sound, no shape.
So the brain is essentially blind to time.
Entirely blind, which means the brain is not functioning as a stopwatch. It is functioning as an interpreter. It has to, reconstruct the feeling of time passing by, gathering secondary clues.
Secondary clues like what?
Things like how much attention you are paying to something, your emotional state, and just the sheer volume of new information you are processing at any given moment.
Ah, okay. The sources highlight a legendary isolation experiment that proves this beautifully. Back in 1962, there was this French geologist named Michel Siffre, and he spent 2 months living in an underground ice cave.
Oh, that experiment is wild.
Right. He had no watch, no calendar, and absolutely no sunlight. He just had a telephone to call his service team when he woke up, when he ate, and when he went to sleep.
Just completely cut off from the world.
Exactly. And when his team finally called down to tell him the experiment was over, this was on September 14th, Siffre was completely shocked. His internal calculation was that it was only August 20th.
That is amazing. He had lost nearly an entire month of subjective time.
Almost a whole month?
Yeah, because without the external clues of the sun or a clock, his brain's interpreters simply failed to track the duration of his isolation. This reveals that every human being is actually operating on 2 completely different clocks.
Okay, 2 clocks. Break that down for me.
So there is the objective clock on the wall, which ticks away with, mathematical precision. And then there is the subjective brain clock, which is highly elastic and honestly incredibly unreliable.
And we spend our whole lives organizing our schedules around that wall clock, completely ignoring the fact that the brain clock is the only one we actually feel. But if the brain is just guessing based on these secondary clues, it raises a major question for me. How does it decide which moments drag on forever and which ones just disappear?
Well, the breakthrough in the psychology of time perception comes down to understanding that the brain uses 2 entirely different mechanisms to measure time, depending on the temporal direction.
Temporal direction? You mean like past versus present?
Precisely. Experiencing time in the present moment, as it happens, relies on a completely different cognitive tool than judging time in the past when you're looking back on it.
Okay, let me set up a scenario from the research to test the mechanics of this. Imagine situation A. You are sitting alone in a waiting room, waiting to be called in for a highly stressful medical test.
Oh, I hate that feeling.
Right, it's awful. Then imagine situation B. You are spending a relaxed, engaging Sunday afternoon in a park with your closest friends.
Much better.
So in the present moment, situation A feels agonizingly slow. You are staring at the door. You are hyper aware of every single second.
Right, because in that waiting room, Your cognitive resources are highly focused on the passage of time itself. When your attention is directed at the clock, time dilates in the present. It literally stretches out.
Okay, and contrast that with the afternoon in the park. Your attention is fully absorbed by the conversation, the laughter, the environment.
Exactly. Because your brain is not allocating resources to monitor time, the hours just seem to vanish in the present.
But wait, let me push back on how the brain records this.
Yeah.
If I am in that high-stress waiting room, I am acutely aware of my surroundings. My brain is on high alert.
Sure.
So why doesn't that intense focus translate into a massive, dense memory that makes the event feel really long when I look back on it?
Because intense focus is not the same thing as novel information. In that waiting room, you are intensely focused on a static environment. Nothing is actually changing.
Oh, I see. It's just the same boring room.
Right. The hippocampus, which is the brain's primary memory center, is triggered by novelty, emotional variance, and new sensory data. In a sterile waiting room, no new synaptic connections are being formed because, well, there is no new data to encode.
Wow. So when you look back at that agonizing hour, say 6 months later, it takes up almost zero space in your memory bank.
Exactly. Subjectively, in retrospect, it feels like it lasted a microsecond.
While the afternoon with friends, which felt so incredibly fast in the moment, generated dozens of new jokes, emotional connections, and distinct visual memories.
Yes, tons of new data.
So when you look back on it, that Sunday feels incredibly rich and substantial. It feels like a long chapter of your life.
Which completely upends that old saying, time flies when you're having fun.
Oh, yeah. It's only half true.
The reality is much more nuanced.
Yeah.
Time flies in the present moment when you are engaged, but it extends in the past because of the memories you created.
Think about taking a 2-week vacation to a place you've never been, like Tokyo.
Oh, perfect example.
While you are there, the days just vanish. You're navigating new train systems, tasting unfamiliar food, figuring out a different language. Your attention is entirely absorbed.
You're just living purely in the present.
Right. And you get to the airport to fly home and feel shocked that the trip is already over. But 6 months later, when you review that trip in your mind, it feels massive. It feels like you lived a parallel life in those 2 weeks.
Because the brain literally uses the density of new memories as a yardstick to calculate how much time has passed. More memory milestones equal a longer subjective duration.
Which perfectly answers our initial question about childhood. When you are 7 years old, your world is saturated with firsts.
Oh, absolutely.
The first time riding a bicycle, the first day at a new school, the first time tasting a certain food.
Everything is unprecedented. Because the environment is unfamiliar, the child's brain is forced to process a massive amount of sensory data. It is constantly laying down these dense, highly detailed memory tracks to understand how the world works.
But as adults, we transition into routines. We drive the exact same route to work every single day. We shop at the same grocery store. We interact with the same colleagues.
And neurobiologically, this shift is driven by something called predictive processing.
Predictive processing?
Yeah. The human brain consumes a massive amount of metabolic energy. To conserve that energy, the brain constantly attempts to predict its environment.
Okay, that makes sense.
So if you drive the same 30-minute route to work for 5 years, your brain already knows the sequence of the stoplights, the curves in the road, the visual landscape. It no longer needs to actively process that data.
It sounds remarkably similar to how digital video compression works.
Oh, how so?
Well, if a security camera is filming an empty hallway, the software doesn't save every single pixel of every single frame because that would take up way too much hard drive space.
Right.
It only records the pixels that change, like when a person walks through the door. It completely ignores the static background.
That analogy maps perfectly onto human memory. Your brain acts as an aggressive editor. It surveys your Tuesday morning commute and asks, did anything change? Is there any new data required for future survival?
And usually there isn't.
Right. When the answer is no, the brain simply doesn't encode a new memory. It renders the static background and relies on your past predictive model.
So a decade of driving to work gets mathematically compressed by the brain into a single blurry file.
Basically, yeah.
Routine is undeniably a great survival strategy for conserving energy, but the hidden cost is terrifying. When days become predictable, the brain stops recording.
It really does.
You reach the end of the year, look back, and the time feels compressed, not because the Earth spun faster, but because your biological hard drive saved very few new frames.
The subjective length of your life is dictated by the amount of novelty you expose yourself to.
I have to challenge this, though, because looking at modern adulthood, it rarely feels like a calm, static video frame.
Okay, fair point.
If I think about my past weekend, it wasn't some peaceful, predictable routine. It was pure chaos. I ran errands, did 3 loads of laundry, answered dozens of urgent emails, scrolled through news updates, shuttled kids around.
I'm exhausted.
It was. I was juggling a million inputs. It was nonstop action. Yet, by Monday morning, that weekend completely vanished from my memory, just like the boring commute. Why does chaotic busyness compress just as much as static routine?
That is a great question. Modern psychology identifies this state as time poverty. It is crucial to distinguish between being busy and having a rich experience.
Busy versus rich. Okay.
Yeah. Time poverty is a structural state where your discretionary time is entirely consumed by cognitive maintenance tasks. You feel a constant scarcity of time driven by endless obligations.
So the mistake we make is assuming that high activity equals high novelty.
Precisely. Answering 50 emails or doing laundry requires action, yes, but it does not require deep cognitive engagement or introduce novel data. Furthermore, our modern environment is engineered around constant, low-level stimulation.
For sure.
We rely on algorithms to feed us content, GPS to navigate our streets, predictive text to write our messages. We are moving at an incredibly high velocity, but we are essentially operating on autopilot.
Let's look at the ultimate example of this, the infinite scroll on social media.
Oh, the worst culprit.
You sit on the couch, open an app, and swipe through 15-second video fragments for an hour. Your brain is undeniably occupied, you feel stimulated.
Right.
But the moment you put the phone down, you usually cannot recall a single piece of information you just consumed.
And the neurobiology behind that is fascinating. Endless scrolling provides microdoses of dopamine. This neurotransmitter keeps your attention locked in the present moment, constantly seeking the next novel stimulus.
Just constantly craving the next hit.
Exactly. However, these platforms are designed with absolutely no natural friction. There are no stopping points.
Right, the video just loops, or the next one autoplays.
And that lack of a pause bypasses a critical neurological function. For the brain to move information from short-term working memory into long-term storage, it requires a period of consolidation.
Consolidation, like processing time.
Yeah. The brain's default mode network needs a moment of idle time to synthesize what it just saw, attach emotional weight to it, and file it away.
So without that pause, we're just keeping the brain's RAM full without ever hitting the save button to the hard drive.
That's exactly it. The modern digital environment keeps us perpetually stimulated, but cognitively starved. Your brain's editor looks at the 2 hours of scrolling, recognizes it as a continuous loop of transient dopamine hits rather than meaningful survival data, and simply deletes it.
Wow, it just throws the footage away.
Yep. Your weekend vanishes because, despite the high volume of activity, you provided your brain with 0 memorable landmarks.
This realization is daunting, I won't lie, but it also reveals the solution. If the compression of time is caused by a lack of consolidated memory, it means we have the leverage to stretch our subjective time back out.
We absolutely do.
The research points out that the experience economy already capitalizes on this. Look at how a luxury hotel or a massive theme park like Disney operates. They do not attempt to entertain you for every single second of a 12-hour visit.
No, they don't, because they understand that trying to maintain continuous peak engagement is neurologically impossible.
Yeah.
You will still stand in long lines, experience fatigue, and deal with massive crowds.
But instead, they design for memory through what psychologists call the peak end rule.
Right.
They engineer 1 or 2 massive emotional spikes. A surprise interaction, a perfectly timed fireworks display, a personalized note waiting in your hotel room.
Exactly. They know your brain's editor will compress the hours of waiting in line, but it will permanently save those engineered peaks.
And 6 months later, your memory of that trip feels vast and magical. So we can apply this exact same architectural approach to our daily lives.
You don't need to quit your job and move to a foreign country to generate novelty. The goal is simply to disrupt the brain's predictive processing model. You just need to introduce enough friction to force the hippocampus to wake up and start recording again.
Basically, break the video compression algorithm.
Make the pixels change. And the interventions can be remarkably small. Take a completely different physical route when you walk your dog. Attempt to cook a meal using a spice you have never tasted before.
Visit a neighborhood you usually bypass.
Or just engage in a conversation with a stranger.
It seems almost absurd that something as small as, like, taking a new route home could alter our perception of time.
It does sound crazy. But the brain doesn't measure the financial cost or the grandiosity of the novelty. It only detects variance. It recognizes the environmental shift, exits autopilot, and encodes a new memory landmark.
But generating the novelty is only the first step, right? Because to ensure that new frame actually gets saved to the hard drive, we have to reintroduce the element that technology has stripped away from us, reflection.
Yes. Reflection is the consolidation mechanism.
It forces the brain to retrieve the event.
Exactly. Whether you spend 2 minutes writing in a journal, taking a deliberate photograph, or just sitting in silence, you are engaging the default mode network. You are signaling to your brain, this specific data point holds meaning. Do not delete it.
You can literally just pause while brushing your teeth at night and ask yourself, what was the single most surprising thing that happened today?
That is a perfect example. That simple act of retrieval cements the landmark. It creates the stopping point that the infinite scroll refuses to give you.
It shifts you out of time poverty by transforming a fleeting present moment into a permanent psychological asset.
It really does.
When we pull all these threads together, a very clear picture emerges. We started with this unsettling feeling that time is slipping through our fingers as we age. But the science shows us that while we cannot manipulate the physical clock on the wall, we are in complete control of the brain's clock.
Right. A long, fulfilling life is not merely a biological calculation of how many years you survive. It is a psychological calculation of how many distinct, meaningful moments you manage to retain.
Which fundamentally redefines how we should view productivity. We are conditioned to measure a productive day by how many tasks we crossed off a list, how many emails we processed, or how efficiently we maintained our routines.
The busy work.
Exactly. But true subjective productivity should be measured by whether you experienced anything today that your brain will refuse to forget.
If you execute a flawless, highly efficient day, but reach the end of it with no distinct memory of what actually occurred, that day is lost to the compression algorithm.
Think about the weight of that. If your memories are literally the only metric your brain uses to measure the length of your existence, then stepping outside your routine isn't just a, casual recommendation for self-care.
No, not at all.
It is the only viable method we have for performing time travel. By intentionally introducing a small piece of novelty into your day, you are literally buying your future self more time. You are stretching out the psychological length of your own life.
You are building the landmarks that tell you that you actually lived.
So, as you finish listening to this deep dive and return to your schedule, I want to leave you with one specific question to mull over. What is one small, completely unfamiliar thing you can do this afternoon? Something that breaks the algorithm of your day that your future self will look back on and thank you for.